Show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Vision radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear. Good morning, UCY.TV radio listeners. This is Lonnie Clark. Today is October 3rd, 2017, 8 o'clock in the morning. I do not have a guest this morning to discuss anything with you, so if you want to give me a call, please feel free. The number is 718-717-8106. And anyone who listens to my show regularly can probably guess what I'm going to be talking about, along with, the typical nuclear corruption. The event that happened yesterday, I'm not so sure I buy the official story, and I've taken a lot of flack from that on Facebook and other places where I dared venture say that this might not have been what they're telling us it is. And that is exactly the same kind of response I get when I tell people that Fukushima is still ongoing, that we have nuclear waste strewn all over this country, that our increase in diabetes, schizophrenia, birth defects, heart disease, in my opinion, are all extremely likely related to the advent of nuclear power, energy, and war. It seems to me that our country is really already gone through the soft coup. I mean, I've called Trump Pinochet 2.0, but after the 9 months of watching exactly what happened and what his responses on Twitter are quite telling, actually. The fact that he's had no responses. He has kept his trap shut means that he is, he thought he could be rogue inside the rogue state, knowing the rogue state as he does, because he knows how corrupt it is, the fake media, as he calls it. They put him on television all the time, the super fake media. Talk about bite the hand that feeds you. My goodness gracious, that's exactly where we're at. So then I've got all this stuff swirling around in my head, and I'm taking political science classes called International Relations and Comparative Politics. They're basic political science classes that teach us how political scientists actually view culture, view history, view how all this is going down. And it's pretty predictable, as it turns out. There are certain things that you can factor into. They actually have created an index, that comes out, I think they said every 5 years. Let me see if I can find it, because I had it. The index is about, it's on the other one. I'm just going to open it up again. This index is about the grievances, where we're at in culture, in order for you to feel comfortable. So it's really just a matter where you're at. It's called the Fragile State Index Report of 2017. And they can see, I mean, it's almost like they're watching us eat ourselves alive, and they're going, very interesting. They are doing exactly what we planned them to do. And as I was reading this stuff last night, pondering what happened actually really pondering the hostility that I've gotten from people. When I say a man who has no apparent links to any, quote, terrorist, has made no online public statements, never really been a gun owner. I mean, all the weapons that he dragged up there, something happened that is not being told. And in fact, I saw a video on YouTube, and yes, I know people discredit YouTube, but I saw a video of a woman who posted up about 45 seconds, 30 seconds of a video that she had that was a gun, looked like the bullets coming out of the fourth or fifth floor, somewhere around there. So we really do not know the real extent of why this happened. Because when I first heard about it, I would love for Michael to call in, because I know he's a gun aficionado and he can answer these questions. But when I looked at how far away it was, I don't know. Can bullets go that far? That's like my thing. Like, I guess they can, because no one's questioning it. That was the answer to my question after thinking about it all day yesterday. Because if bullets couldn't go that far, people would be jumping up and down saying, they can't go that far. This can't be that. So there has to be something to this story that makes it look real. But this just it stinks. It totally stinks. The storyline, everything, and even the CIA, Mr. CIA, here we go again, urges not to jump conclusions on the shooter. So they want us, the Islamic State is taking credit for this. So just to throw the glitch in. And then on top of that, you put this on top of the fact that old Trumpster is not tweeting on this. Nothing except we're sorry for, he got spanked for saying warmest condolences. He's such a narcissist. I'm beginning to feel sad for him, like I do most narcissists, because they're so pathetically insecure. That was him really trying to be really warm and showing that it really affected him, and he wanted them to know, and that's all it was. He's just illiterate and insensitive. He has no idea how to be sensitive. He's like the little kid who bite your hand and then give you a hug and say, "What? I need a hug." The number this morning is 718-717-8106. I know there's people in the chat room that can call in. 718-717-8106. I'd love to have a conversation with you about this, because I am just going to go on for the next 50 minutes, folks, about this, because our country is swirling. We are in the middle of the collapse of the empire, even though we have all the weapons on the whole planet. That's going to be the most interesting experiment, to see how the empire collapses without destroying the world, which is why they built the empire. We have the strongest military, so nobody could challenge us. But the question is, and not only that, if you guys have listened to Jewel's show, which I'm certain most of you have before the first cup, it's not just conventional warfare that they're using. In fact, maybe it was unconventional warfare that somebody used on this guy to nut up and just start shooting people and then kill himself and do himself in. Who knows? It's not that hard to vibe you out, implant a chip, do something, the COINTELPRO thing, there's a whole world of government that we know nothing about. We're on a need-to-know base. And maybe that's a clue, too. Maybe it's because he was part of that horrible monster that builds all the weaponry and stuff. He did retire. He was a relatively younger man who said they worked for Lockheed Martin. He worked for Lockheed Martin. So, but they refused to tell us where he worked and what he did. And so he's been retired for quite a long time, living the life of a gambler, living large, as they say, like a normal person, though, had nothing abnormal. And then I just love the shrill of the Democrats. We need gun control while they rubber stamp the military budget and ignore all the nuclear pollution. And how many Democrats do we have on H.R. 3053, which is actually sitting in committee on in Congress right now, going through? And it is likelihood I've been following it because I have been calling the Oregon senators or Congress people who are co-sponsored on this, Schrader and what's the guy's name up there in Portland? I forget, the one that wears a bow tie. Anyways, him. And they basically are still on it. And I've been calling them once a week and suggesting that they relook at this. I sent them all of Donna's documents. Their name is still on there, which really is disheartening. That's part of the anxiety that we live in this. I mean, and in fact, in my political science classes, that is in fact what undermines a democracy, is when the legitimacy of the vote and the legitimacy of the government is not respected and people don't believe in it. The only thing you have left to is resort to is military force, i.e. militarized police departments, because we have a banana republic. Bada bada bing. They did it to South America. They've done it to America. And when I said Pinochet 2.0, that's in fact what I was talking about. Because Chile they really imposed a hardcore dictator and people were disappeared. And he was in power for 17 years. He got reelected. People prefer, and in fact, that's what our classes, it's human behavior is quite predictable. People would prefer a dictator over chaos and anxiety, instead of formulating it out of themselves. So this, and plus, on the second idea, is that democracy is relatively new on the world stage of how planets live, of how we've lived on this planet. It's a brand new idea. And it seems to be struggling in some areas. And it happens to be, in particular, in areas where the military is, because they don't need democracy. In fact, democracy is difficult. It's not an easy thing. It's almost like consensus is not easy, that movement, the Ubuntu movement. I had one of the people who was starting the Ubuntu Eugene movement on here. I am who I am because of all of you are, or everything that you are, something like that. That's an African theme. One of the things that the colonists did was, in Africa, they ruled by consensus. They had elders and they all agreed and everybody went, it worked. Well, the colonists came in and imposed their ruler by a whole different hierarchy. And there was no longer consensus. And we have actually seen the African continent be completely decimated and continues to be completely decimated. In fact, to be honest, I started this radio show extremely optimistic, really gung-ho, thought we could make a difference and get people on and people would see all the injustice, especially about the nuclear industry, and especially when I found out about what was happening in St. Louis. And yet, yesterday, Larry Bergen, dear sweet Larry Bergen, was like, I was appalled at how those people in St. Louis are protesting at the EPA. That poor guy, he's just trying to do his job, and we would have loved for the EPA to come to us. Therein speaks in the complete difference of racism in our country. Because the people in St. Louis that are protesting are all white, so their antics, while they're considered bothersome, is not considered a national scandal. They're entitled to do any type of protesting they feel like. Black people, not so much. They still need to keep their place. Brown people, they need to keep their place. Women, keep your place. That also has been categorically studied and analyzed. It's really this whole thing. The response to Fukushima is literally predictable when you consider how this all has come down, in especially human history. Like, it's the only difference with Fukushima is that it's large enough to kill our planet. And it is killing our planet, folks. Let's just be clear. It is the nuclear pollution, not just from Fukushima. Fukushima was just them pushing us off the barrel over Niagara Falls in a barrel. And we have not hit rock bottom yet. We have not crashed. Give that 3-4 generations. Unless we really do release sound healing, there's a lot of ideas that can be done. Will they be done? I personally, like I said, I'm not feeling the enthusiasm today at all. It is not. When we look at Congress, we need more gun laws. Really? Now, I'm not actually one to advocate for automatic or semi-weapons in the hands of individuals who are not in the military, personally. But when I look at the likes of what's going on in our country with our government, we need our people armed almost as equally as the military, because they are going to come after us, period. And in this regard, this is the one thing I have to say, like that, the guitarist who says he changed his mind about gun control after watching this. I guess that's true. We do need to have, there has to be some form, something has to happen in terms, but it's not because of that event. It's because it makes logical sense. We have more licensing over our automobiles. Look at the hoops that people have to jump through for all kinds of things in this country. And yet, I don't know, anybody can just go out in the middle of nowhere, shoot a gun, shoot anything. You can kill any animal you want in most states. You can kill a rabbit, you can kill owl, And even if you if you don't get caught, it's just the whole idea of unfettered violence. It's, I don't know. You can hear in my voice, folks. So the number is 718-717-8106. I thought I'd just give you my thoughts because, it's ridiculous for me to rail against Trader Trump. Whether Mueller comes up with the goods and is willing to put it out there or can put it out there, guess that all depends on the elites who are running the country. And that, again, also is a factor in this fragile state index meter that they've created. The indicators are cohesion, economic, political, social, and cross-cutting. Cross-cutting is when people get involved in it. So, they have actually studied each one of these and rated the countries accordingly to their sustainability and whether they're stable or whether they're in the verge of collapse or, whether we need to be looking at them. It's interesting how we've sort of divvied up the planet, all the space on the planet between these various countries and how it's gone through history and who has the power and who doesn't. The very most sustainable country on the planet, according to this index, is Finland. Then Norway, Switzerland, Denmark, Sweden, Australia, Ireland, Iceland, Canada, New Zealand, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Austria, Germany, and Portugal. Those are sustainable. Very sustainable, very stable. You want to see if we get into very stable? Stable means there are some things that are out of whack, but it's pretty stable. Belgium, Slovenia. So our First Lady's country is rated more stable than our own. Okay, Belgium, Slovenia, Singapore, United Kingdom, France, the United States. Yay, here we are finally. We're in the middle of the pack. Uruguay comes after us. Japan is only 2 after us. Spain, South Korea, and Malta. And for those of you wondering, no, they didn't take into Fukushima. They all have responded to this thing as if it was a thing of the past. It's just something that was in the back end. So, big long list. There's 178 countries. These things, this index tells us how they're presenting the Western world to the Western world. That's really what it's about. It's not about it. I mean, how we're moving through creating and creating history is still on the principle of black and brown people and women and children have no voice, no rights, no matter what. This is still his story. Just like that shooter, the guy, like they want us to believe that some guy who basically had a few guns at his house, a few pistols at his house originally when he moved up there, somehow ended up with what they say they found. It's one or the other, 17 at his home and 23 in the hotel, or 23 and 17, something like that. Like they found stockpiles of guns, that he actually had put up a tripod and was aiming at people for some reason. And this on the heels of that thing that's happened in Cuba, where the Cubans can't figure out what's happening to the U.S. diplomats. And my guess, what's happening to the U.S. diplomats is the CIA is damaging the hearing and destroying the relationship between Cuba and the United States intentionally, because they have no interest in the Cuban people and the Cuban government getting along with the United States government, because the United States wants to annex Cuba, basically like they did Puerto Rico. I mean, the president considers Puerto Rico semi-American. It's pretty obvious. He has no concept that they are full-blooded, 100% Americans. They are Americans. The only trick is that the Congress refuses to let them vote. And also the Republicans have passed laws so that they can't declare bankruptcy. So they come in and can borrow do their lending rates at whatever rate they want and rape and pillage Puerto Rico, and nothing can happen. And gee, we wonder why it's so corrupt down there. We wonder why. FEMA is basically putting their hands on the throat of people down there saying, if you hand out too much supplies, we're just going to cut it off. The real story of what's going down around there is not being told. And the American people are being manipulated. Oh, geez, surprise, surprise, surprise. So I guess that's where my optimism is gone, isn't it? I guess, this is the issue. We have to track our own thoughts, don't we? Maybe I should do a tapping session. How about that? It'll take like 3 minutes. We'll keep it short. So how about that? So you guys can tap along with me if you want. And even if you don't want to say the words out loud yourself, just tap. We'll go through the tapping spots, and that way you can tap along with us. Well, I always start with the side karate chop on my hand when I first start. And then I move to the start of my eyebrow, the corner of my eye, the top of your cheekbone, underneath your nose you want to tap. You can use 2 fingers, 1 finger. The crease underneath your mouth, on your clavicle, you want to tap on your clavicle, and then underneath your armpit, and then to the top of your head. And then I always end up on the karate chop of my hand. So we're gonna shift our energy on this one, because this is overwhelming. We are becoming overwhelmed, and we have to use the tools that we have been given to us. Poetry, art, tapping, well-being, exercise. These are all things that can help us focus on the priorities and the important things, rather than the anxiety and the trauma that they're about to bludgeon us with. I personally think that this whole thing with this shooter is about to lead into something much bigger that's going to take the country and really rock the country. They're just not telling us. And so I don't believe the official story. So far, the official story sounds like a big fat lie. And something is wrong with that whole thing. I don't know what it is, but intuitively I can tell you it stinks. There is something wrong. Just like the Boston bombing story, that was an exercise to see how people did with military police. And guess what? They found out. Americans don't mind the militarized police very much at all. Whew. So, tapping on the side of your hand. Even though I feel really anxious about being out of control and realizing we don't have a democracy, that we're just completely super screwed by the elites, and that this is like where we're at and where we're headed, and our children have a very dire looking future, and the answers are being buried. Even though all of that, I deeply and completely love, honor, and approve of myself and forgive myself for feeling overwhelmed, and I forgive all those people that have done all this great harm, or I'm making an effort to forgive them. And even though all of that, I deeply and completely love, honor, and approve of myself. And now tap on the top of your head. And just think about all that anxiety, man, like all the shooting and the killing that they want us to think about, all that grief and all that disharmony and feeling like we can't do anything. While the solutions are right at our fingertips. Now tap out the corner of your eye, and then tap underneath on your chin, on top of your cheek, like I guess on your cheekbone. And think on underneath your nose, and think about all the chaos going on, the absolute utter corruption, the fact that our country is being run by a bunch of sociopathic megalomaniacs destroying our planet. Now tap underneath your chin, underneath your mouth, and then underneath your chin. And then I'm moving on to my clavicle. I'm getting through this. I keep forgetting that you guys can't see what I'm doing. Oh, my God. And just the discourse, the hate. You should see the words that were written to me last night on Facebook because I didn't believe their usual story. Now underneath your arm. And it's so apparent that people are just being used. Think about all of that. Now let's tap on the top of your head. That gets to your pineal gland, by the way. Even though we have to live through these times, and I personally believe we pick these times for our spiritual growth, and it's a big challenge, but life was never a big challenge. And even though everything we have to deal with, I deeply and completely love, honor, approve, and accept myself. Now tap the side of your hand. And I deeply and completely love, honor, and approve, and accept myself. Now take a deep breath. Now, there you go. How do you guys feel? How long did that take? 4 minutes. Not bad. I feel a lot better. Keep telling yourself that, Lonnie. So I guess this is a renegade show. I don't think in all of the 2.5 years I've been doing this show, I have ever just felt so blatantly, I don't know, like, does it really matter? Like, they're going to do to us what they're going to do, and it has started. It started yesterday. If people think, I just do not believe for a second that shooter story was true, period. I don't care what all the signs look like. Something about it stinks. Fragile state index. I can see some social scientists talking about the fragile state index of the United States right now. The CIA telling everybody not to jump to conclusions because this might be ISIS. That guy might be an ISIS person. Right? Considering that they are ISIS, they fund everything. Maybe this guy was like an ex-Edward Snowden guy, right? Living in secrecy, or he was some spy living. I mean, who knows what the real story was? In the meantime, do we hear anything about nuclear leaks? I don't think we do. In fact, they're not going to tell us. Fukushima is literally, they have pretty much declared that Fukushima has fallen apart in Japan, folks. If you're not being able to follow those stories, they're basically coming out and just telling people that they know that it's been leaking for a good long time. And they know that there are, it might be affecting the surrounding area. Might be. And also they have decided to indict the Yakuza, which is the mafia in Japan, for selling an illegal worker over there for how much? A mere $1,800. And that's illegal. So that's exactly where that goes, you know. I mean, we are in serious hurts. We are in serious, serious hurts about where we're at on the state of our country and on the state of our planet. And if you look at these indexes, this is why political science, I think, matters, because they have been able to take a look at where things go. When you study the big dynasties and empires throughout history, the glitch is that the United States, our Constitution came up with an idea about democracy that had not really ever been tried. And it has kind of taken off because people like their freedom. But democracies are fragile because it requires that people believe in it and participate. And when they don't participate, it's because they don't believe in it. So it's kind of like a negative feedback loop. You know, and it is really tremendously important that we choose to actively engage in the face of all of these horrendous obstacles. I mean, we do have solutions that are being oppressed and suppressed and kept from the hands of average people. It's almost like the Puerto Rico is a perfect analogy for the solution to the nuclear waste and the nuclear weapons. We do, sitting there with full docks of supplies, we know exactly what to do. We probably have more supplies than we have demand. But it's being held back by the interlocutors, by the people who are standing in front of us saying, you have to play our game with us. If you want that stuff, you have to do what we tell you to do. And if you don't, you are not getting anything. And that's the way it's going to be. I mean, we are in a serious place on our planet where it's important for all of us to step up and figure out how we can actively engage, whether it's in the nuclear industry. This is my thing. I don't get how 350.org, how people like these big, I don't even care how much money they're getting, National Resource Defense Fund. The people are living in New York City, working in a high-rise, not far from Indian Point, are telling the people on the planet that nuclear is no problem. Don't worry about it. To me, that's unconscionable and incomprehensible. I guess it's almost as incomprehensible as sweet Larry Bergen saying, wow, man, those people in St. Louis, they're never going to get anything done. Look what they're doing to the EPA. I mean, he gets it. He gets exactly what happens. You play it our way or you get nothing. But let's just face it, you get nothing anyways. In St. Louis, St. Louis is the epicenter of ridiculousness. 200,000 pounds of buried uranium that they did spend 10, 12, 18 years removing, and then, boom, popped up a little site of corruption. It's like a little eyesore. That's what happened. It was like all of a sudden this sweltering, thing came up and it became a fire and they can't put it out. And it's continuing. And it smells horrible around there. 3 to 5 miles, when the air is bad, it's really bad. And so, yeah, they have the youth out there like, hey, we're going to chain ourselves to these equipment. We're going to chain ourselves to these things because nobody's listening. So you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. And I guess the bottom common line is you're damned. Like, for real. I mean, and this isn't like when we get 18, we get to leave this horrible house. That's how I lived my life, frankly. I get that one. I mean, I talk about violence in the home and violence against women on purpose because it is exactly the same tool that keeps black people oppressed, that keeps the nuclear waste, the chemical waste to be considered not so bad. It's not, it's just part of doing business. You have to have nuclear waste. You just have to have it. And people are just going to have to get sick. And yes, it might threaten our species, but for the betterment of mankind, the rest of you are worth giving up so that we few 100,000 can make it in perpetuity so that our genes can make it in 10,000 years, because you guys are meaningless and completely pointless and your lives mean nothing. And if you speak out on a regular basis, you will be harassed or murdered or set up. Who knows? Who knows what this guy was planning on doing? I mean, he was living the life of a gambler, right? Just messing around, just spending money here, spending money there. Didn't really have roots. I mean, you know, when you spend a lot of time in a casino like that, you get to see a lot of things that aren't so, like, kosher, so to speak. Who knows who he really was, and if we'll really ever find out, or maybe after the fact, because here we are, 2017, people are still believing that the 9/11 story was real. I mean, there are people out there who would say I'm a complete nut job because I, not for a second, believe it. I mean, I 100% put the responsibility on Dick Cheney and Don Rumsfeld and George Bush for perpetrating this against our country. And I don't for a second believe that any of those so-called bombers, the people that were on the airplanes, were real. I mean, a few of them may have been killed to make it look real, just like a few people were killed. I mean, we had 600 people injured yesterday. They love to go for the gold on these big, when they do these cultural shift-changing events, they cause some kind of thing that just puts shock and fear into people at a deep level that you can't shake off. And in 9/11, the case of 9/11, they made sure they showed us the burning buildings for a week, just nonstop, every station. We watched them collapse. And we watched every story that talked about doubting the official story just disappear and people start getting knocked off. And the media clicking their heels saying, Sig Heil, Sig Heil. And that's what we've been doing. And anybody who talked about against it is not considered a patriot. Just like now, people love to say, the Democrats, those left-wing people, they just hate our government. Or people say, the GOP, they just hate our government. It's even deeper. It's not that people hate our government. And they're not. These aren't people. I mean, I've been told that I was part of the problem. People like you. That's what I have been told by the left and the right. I called into a talk show host to talk to somebody and questioned Hillary Clinton's efficacy and that she had actually won the primary, that there was a lot of evidence coming out that they had actually scrubbed 2 million voters in Puerto Rico and that there were votes uncounted still in California. And I was told that I was the problem. People like me are the problem. I pretend to be left, and yet I question things like this. And then, of course, you know, I come out and speak publicly that I believe that women have a right to have abortions because is it any more murder than sending your 20-year-old son off to war? That's murder, too. I could go 100% on an abortion ban if the country was 100% pacifist and refused to allow anything to be killed. I could go on that one. But, and take away the death penalty too. But to say that, for me, it's plucking the garden. I think it is a gift from God. I think personally, I really believe that 100%. That at the time in history, it was almost like a special gift from God where we were able to end the suffering. Because in our country, at the time it passed, there was at least 5,000 young women we knew every year, and they were all poor because what did the rich women do? They went to Europe and got their abortions. Anybody who could fly out of the country could just go to Europe and come back and not talk about it and stand in the picket lines against the women who had backroom abortions and who were fighting to get legal abortions. I mean, and I'm not saying that the way that it's run, I think, frankly, we could use a lot more mandatory therapy after you have an abortion. I think that cops need to have mandatory therapy. I think if we're going to have a police force, people need to have mandatory therapy because taking it out on your family and on your future family is uncalled for and unnecessary in a time when we know that we are being bombarded by all these different factions. And really, humans are just fragile creature little beings. We want love more than anything. We want peace more than anything, so that we're willing to be dominated by bullies and mean people who kill other people, but they're not killing us, so we're good. I mean, it is time for us to grow up as a species, and perhaps maybe all of this is what's happening. I mean, I hope that to be true. I guess that's my look for the future, that the few thousand that are going to survive this time there will be so few human beings on this planet that war will not even be a discussion. But that's the other thing in these political science classes, is they take this idea that war is just natural, that we've always had these, natural factions of warring states, and that just happens. And I hope that as humans we can outgrow that, because war is definitely not the answer. And let's just look at the mass animal deaths this morning, folks. Let's just take a look. My brain keeps going there. We have 20 minutes left. If anybody wants to give me a call, it's 718-717-8106. You're listening to Lonnie Clark on UCY.TV. 718-717-8106. And if you're on Skype, you can Skype me at Lonnie.Clark7, the number 7. Mass animal deaths. And people say that we are not in a catastrophe. We are in a serious catastrophe, folks. Oh, goodness gracious. Suddenly, I love the way the way they put it. September 26, 2017, thousands of birds suddenly dropped dead in Bali, Indonesia. Suddenly. Wow. Hundreds of dead fish found in the river in Visu, Portugal. Tens of thousands of chickens dead to Hurricane Maria in Ay Bonito, Puerto Rico. September 24th, 14 dolphins have washed up in the past 10 days in Marabella, Spain. 14. 1,000 dead deer due to outbreak of disease in Pennsylvania, America. 47 dolphins washed up this year along the Gulf Coast in America. That was a story on September 21st. September 20th, thousands of dead fish found in a canal in Florida. September 20th, 5 dead fish washed along the beach in Kinburn Spit, Ukraine. September 20th, 30 fish die in a farm in Finistère, France. Thousands, hundreds. I mean, our planet is in a serious world of hurt. She has a link here called Our Dying Planet, and she talks about the bats. The past 7 years, a die-off of 6.7 million bats have occurred in America due to white nose syndrome, causing a 90% fall in bat populations. Now, bats have are major pollinators for foods that we eat: bananas, mangoes, dates, figs, peaches, cashews, guava, and avocados. They also consume agricultural pests. So having dead bats is definitely not a good idea, folks. You know, we are a gifted species. We have the ability to sustain ourselves for a long period of time and to create magic on Earth. We have the power of magic. And the magic is just pure love and pure energy, pure light. And we know that we're vibrational energies. Listen to the, what's it called? The Flying Lasagna, that show. She talks about the dimensional energies that we have. I mean, there's a lot of shows on this radio station, frankly. If you're just listening to UCY.TV, there's a lot of shows that are very interesting that come up on this station. This is, in fact, how I ended up doing this radio show. Is when there are so many different shows. I never really paid attention to anything alternative for real until the Bush election. And nothing in science until after Fukushima. Even through understanding that the CIA, reading Russ Baker's Secret History, The Secret Government of the United States by Russ Baker. It's called The Family of Secrets. That's the title of his book. A really awesome read, but man, is it hard to read because it comes against everything that we think about as being American is completely devious and just nothing but a lie. And he documents how the Bush crime family really has had its hands in manipulating American culture and American politics as far back as they probably could, like in the late 1800s. And it's a really well-documented book. It's called The Family of Secrets by Russ Baker. Highly recommend it. Because as Americans, we're sort of captured victims. We are a very isolated nation. We don't have neighbors that we interact with a lot. The neighbors that we interact with are actually immigrants or foreigners who come here to live. And what's interesting is we say our nation is a nation of foreigners, and yet we make laws to make it difficult for foreigners, unless you're white. I mean, the common theme here all goes back to the white eugenicists, that white people are fundamentally better, smarter, everything else than anybody of any other color. And it was not just people of color. It was people of money also. That's why they didn't like the immigrants coming from Ireland or from Italy. Yes, they were Europeans, but they were poor people. They came over with nothing. And there's sort of like this weird disdain. I mean, we can hear it in Donald Trump's voice. He acts like he's condescending on the little people when he comes and talks to people. It's going to be interesting to see what he does when he comes. Like, he's going to Puerto Rico. He's going to probably just do a flyover of Puerto Rico. Like, there's not much he can do except get out of the way and authorize money and I mean, he could have had all of it done, but to me, Trump is enacting Jim Crow tactics on Puerto Rico, and we are seeing it. You know, yeah, you can vote, but you have to understand this, and you have to do that, and you have all these hoops you have to jump over before you can get the real aid. Whereas in Texas, they had their cell phones up like, boom, like that. You're telling me that we could not have flown in 100, 50,000, 3,000, 4,000 technicians to put their phone lines back up? To bring that stuff in immediately, just a quick wired, like, small way to deal with it. I mean, it's like me questioning this official story on this stupid shooter guy. There is something so out of sync with how the story went down. First off, when you're in the Mandalay Bay and you break a window, you're going to set off a fire alarm. And he broke 2 windows. You're telling me that on the 34th floor, the security didn't come in immediately with the first broken window and get him in there? I mean, what is that story about? The guy, if it was just 1 broken window, okay, I could go with that one. But 2 broken windows. The fact that the guy had no history of guns. None. No real history of knowing all this stuff. And then, boom, all of a sudden he's got all these guns in his house. Nobody in his family knew he was doing this. I mean, there is just so much about this that reeks of corruption. And, I think that this is going to be a springboard to militarization of the United States. We're already there. The cops go out in freaking riot gear. They're already being trained that we're the enemy. That's already part of their training. And especially if you're a black or brown person, you're definitely the enemy. And if you're a woman, you have absolutely, no rights. Life in a collapsing empire. That's what we're dealing with, folks. Life in the collapsing empire. The question is, we're the only empire that's really collapsed that had such a gigantic military force. The world has never seen the military force that the United States has. And yet things are crumbling underneath us as we speak. And the people are understandably anxious, and they want to believe. They want to believe that it's real. Because that would be easier, because people want peace. Like, that's the interesting thing about humans, and we are extremely predictable. This is not something that they are unknown about. They've been able to study it. And in fact, it was them who allowed Pinochet to be installed in Chile. It was the social scientists working with Alan Greenspan. They helped him figure out what type of character they want, where they wanted to put him. They looked for Pinochet, actually. And I personally believe that when they looked for Pinochet, they found Trump. And I know that people think this is a wild-haired idea, and maybe it is, but it sounds super real to me. And I mean, honestly, if I won the lottery, that'd probably be a lot of my research, as I just go figure that one out. Because Donald Trump's very first property was a former paint front, a paint company that was a front for the CIA. Mar-a-Lago is connected to the CIA. He has been around for a long time, hobnobbing with the Clintons. All of a sudden, he came in flaming up this racist thing, saying that Mexicans are horrible, disgusting people. He's incited, literally personally incited racism, and he has been on camera saying that he believes he has the right genes. That's code word for eugenicism. He's putting through Jim Crow tactics on the island of Puerto Rico, which has been decimated by two massive, unseen hurricanes for a long time. They've never gone through two hurricanes like this. What did they expect to have happen? Yes, they could have had things waiting. They could have had the military personnel. He could have said, we're going to send in 40,000 soldiers over there. I'm ordering 40,000 soldiers to go over there. We're going to occupy the island, put it back in order, and that's the way it's going to be. He could have said that, but he chose not to. Because he's not the one choosing. He's being told what to say. And then when he decides he's going to get on the Twitter feed and he's going to do what he wants anyways and say what he wants, he causes a shitstorm of anxiety because he's such a racist bastard. Excuse my language, but man, she's a nasty woman. Really, that's code word for misogyny, folks. She's not a nasty woman. She was like, I'm mad as hell. And she's being told by FEMA she cannot hand out those things. And they are only, even Congressman Gonzalez saw this himself. Jose Gutierrez, that's his name. Jose Gutierrez, he went down there. He saw them handing 1 liter bottle of water out to a family of 4 himself. And he stepped in, and you know what they told him? That's what our orders are. We have to do this. The congressman couldn't make them undo that. This is how thick the bureaucracy. A congressman standing there saying, can't you help these people out? And they're like, huh? Sorry, it's the way it is. I got to tuck my shirt in here. It's getting hot. I mean, honestly, the level of disrespect and disregard for people of color in this nation has got to end. And why does it end? Because of statements like this guy, like, oh yeah, I have the right genes. Really? I mean, I don't know how anybody can respect Donald Trump. I feel sorry for him. The more he goes on, I wish he would just resign because he's so pathetic. He is such a disgrace to the human race, not just to the United States. He's a disgraceful, fat, rich, spoiled brat who has no idea of how to be kind or concerning about the needs of other people. Well, we'll see what they unload on us because we are about to be unloaded on. This little story yesterday is just the beginning, folks. There's something up with it. It's not right. Okay, I'm going to read another poem by Lao Tzu, The Way of Life, and I have to read it again. I know that you guys have heard this one again, but it is a great poem, and it's number 63, and it's about the way of life. Men knowing the way of life do without acting, affect without enforcing, taste without consuming. Through the many, they find the few, through the humble, the great. They respect their foes. They face the simple fact before it becomes involved. solve the small problem before it becomes big. The most involved fact in the world could have been faced when it was simple. The biggest problem in the world could have been solved when it was small. The simple fact that finds no problem big is a sane man's prime achievement. If you say yes too quickly, you may have to say no. If you think things are done too easily, you may find them hard to do. If you face trouble sanely, it cannot trouble you. This is why I love poetry, because it brings us back to where we really can get through life in love. Love is greater than fear. Happiness is resistance. And that's the key here. It's super important for us to figure out ways for us to be happy. And I mean genuinely happy and appreciate our life, because life is a gift. We're each little dot. We're dots. We're like stars in the sky, every single human life. We have a capacity to help improve the lot in life for all of us. That's what makes me a liberal, by the way. I'm learning that in political science class. The fact that I believe in democracy. Whether you're a Republican or not, you're a liberal because you believe in democracy. Because a non-liberal believes in authoritarian states. Because guess what? Authoritarian states actually make a lot more money than democracies, because democracies are unstable. Because they require participation, whereas a authoritarian state, which is what we're seeing now with the police department, they're going to get us to comply. They want us to comply. So nobody called in. That's not very fun, you guys. I wanted you to call in. All you people in the chat room, I know you're listening. There's a few of you there who could actually engage with me on some of these issues. We do have 2 minutes left. It's too late to call, but the next time I do this show, which may be tomorrow, because I don't think I have a guest line, unless I can find somebody, I have nobody lined up for the rest of these next 2 days. So that's the way it's going to be. And part of this is I just decided I am not going to just keep busting my neck and chasing people down. I want the right people on my radio show. And if they can't make it, then I am going to just talk to you about the issues. It's part of building our station, building our show. And I think it gives an opportunity for people to call in and we can discuss the issues. As you've heard on some of my conversations with Michael, I actually don't mind having I can stay calm when somebody tells me that they don't believe the Holocaust happened, which shocked me. Because I know for a fact some level of the Holocaust did happen, because there are people that I know whose grandparents died there. So something happened. And this is all the gaslighting. It's kind of like us being expected to not question this story about yesterday's melee that went on. Something happened, and I don't believe we're being told the truth. And we are going to come out of it, and the truth will come out. And then, of course, it's going to be demeaned anybody who doesn't believe the official story. So there you go. I hope you guys enjoyed the tapping session that we did together. It sure improved my outlook. Put your courage feet on. Take some action, because it really does matter. It is up to us. This is our one life that we have. Let's live it. Take care, you guys.